Hey guys, what's up? It is week 430. Let's jump right into the reviews. The first one up is Perpetrator from Arrow Video, and this is directed by Jennifer Reeder, who did a movie a few years back called Knives and Skin, which I thought was really interesting, really good stuff, kind of a mixture of genres. But Perpetrator, this one came out a couple years ago, and you know what? I think I had heard about it in passing a little bit on Shudder and everything like that. I knew it was on there. But yeah, I was interested. Like I said, I like Knives and Skin. But the biggest star in this one is Alicia Silverstone, and I've noticed she's been in a lot of weird films lately. She was in the Crazy House with Nick Frost, which I loved, and she's good in that. She's just crazy in that as well. But yeah, she has a unique role here. So this one is kind of like an adolescent movie. Well, it has adolescent characters as our lead here, and Johnny. And she is not like other girls. She has kind of a strange power. She feels out of place. She lives with her father, who is distant, not a very good person at all. And she has to kind of steal and rob places to make ends meet to survive. At the same time, during this whole thing, there's kind of a serial killer going around. Well, girls are disappearing. They don't really know exactly what's happening. And the whole culture around this school is just really disgusting. Everybody seems to be getting plastic surgery or having these unique changes about them and modification. And at first I was like, are we going to that idea where like and they somewhat do that. As you catch on what's going on, everything kind of comes together. I don't want to spoil everything, but it does come together at the end fairly well on that aspect. And this has a weird tone. It's a consistent tone, which I'm fine with. I always like movies that if they have a consistent tone, even if it's weird or a little off, I always feel like the filmmaker knows what they're doing. And this tone is definitely consistent, and this kind of weird characters are just bizarre and strange. And there's a little element of kind of humor in here as well, and maybe satire, where everything they teach the kids is ridiculous. You know, like their kind of self-defense, and it's just off. Everything is off. The whole world is off, and everybody seems like a creep. A lot of the parental figures and authority figures are just monsters in themselves. So yeah, anyways, it seems that the main girl kind of figures out that, along with kind of like a blossoming romance with another girl, figures out that every one of the girls that disappeared has had an encounter with this one person, and they start to put two to two together, and they end up kind of discovering some weird things. At the same time, I said the character Johnny, she has these kind of special powers where it's somewhat, I don't know how to explain it. It's in that umbrella of like a extreme empath, but also somebody that can adapt and even kind of almost absorb the kind of their emotions or reflect that person within them. So you get a lot of like staring into somebody, and her face will change to their face, and the person's like, what was that? I thought that was a really kind of cool, unique way. There's also that aspect in here where one of the characters, and I don't want to spoil too much, but it's an interesting point here, where somebody feels so beat down or chased or not allowed in this world, they need to hide, that they actually physically adapt to be somebody else for a long period of time, which is kind of the idea that, you know, you're not comfortable in your own skin due to the people who you're surrounded with, or the culture that you live in, or the society that you live in. So they're definitely kind of making that comment in the film. I think it's pretty unique looking too. I think it's got some nice shots, some weird shots. It does feel like it's kind of like on a budget at times. I also think that the way they kind of handle the high school stuff is cool. I think it works well. And it does have the same kind of vibe like Knives and Skin. And I could tell after this one feels a little darker, visually at least, in darker sense. But there's a lot of cool stuff they do with the special effects and surrealism, I guess, with her powers. It's not necessarily surrealism, but they get very surreal looking, if that makes sense. I enjoyed this. Oh, it was good. Alicia Silverstone plays her aunt. She is an odd character, a unique character. Like I said, she has been popping up in weird stuff lately, and I like that. I like seeing actresses and actors do kind of strange films, especially when they're bigger. They don't have to do these lesser, smaller films, and I don't mean that as a hit on the movie. I love these lesser, smaller films. That's why I keep watching new films, to see something different or interesting. You know, some of the big ones can be good. I really like Sinners, but yeah, I thought Perpetrator was well worth seeing. Now, it is very weird, it is very bizarre, and it's going to lose a lot of people, you know, and it does have social messages in there, and I don't know when this came a point in like modern cinema watch. People get really mad about a lot of social stuff in their movies, and I don't mind it. As long as it's well done. Every once in a while, something that comes across really incredibly ham-fisted. Now, I mean, I think that the social messages to me are a little bit more obvious than when I watch a 70s movie. I think it's a little under-hidden, but I'm not living it right now. I'm not seeing it everywhere. You know what I mean? I don't have social media back in the 70s or something when you see a movie that constantly hits everything. And I'm sure the people in the 70s might have felt, hey, this is a little ham-fisted at times too. But I don't think this movie is necessarily ham-fisted. I do think the social messages and all that kind of stuff is in there. But I remember people just get so mad about it now. Like, they're like, ah, it's like, even if you agree or don't agree, it's a movie, and you should take it at that, and maybe get a point of interest or a different take or something. I don't know. Regardless, I enjoyed this one. It's pretty good looking on Blu-ray. It's a Blu-ray. Looks really solid. As far as the special features, don't want to skip out on those. Brand new audio commentary with writer, director Jennifer Reeder and director of photography, Sevdi Castrata. That's going to be a hard name. Castrata. And that's interesting enough. They talk about getting the cast and everything and how they worked with them and setting up shots and whatnot. That was interesting. Perpetrator Mirrors a Monstrous Womb, a brand new video essay by filmmaker Jen Handorf. On set cast interviews with Kaya McCurran, Alicia Silverstone, Melanie Libbird, and Christopher Lowell. They all are very short, about 5 minutes or so. Talk about working with the director, and they all seem to really enjoy the director and got along very well. Screenplay 2024, music video for Aotis, directed by Jennifer Reeder. Tiny Baby, a music video for Joan of Arc, directed by Jennifer Reeder. 3 short films directed by Reeder, all small bodies. That's 20 minutes. I Dream You, You Dream of Me. 11 minutes. Lola, 5 minutes original trailer, Versatile Sleeve featuring 2 original artworks by Creepy Duck Design and Duke Aber, Shutter, illustrated collector's booklet featuring new writing on the film by Kate Hughes and Marianne Lapon. I thought this was good. If you like weird films, crazy films, then I think Perpetrator is definitely something that you should check out. A little bit of like coming of age, I guess you would say in there. It's kind of a necessity when you're in high school movies and you have all these kind of weird powers and stuff like that. People are definitely going to compare it to Carrie, but it's definitely not something as clear-cut as telekinesis. I can't believe that's a sentence. It's not as clear-cut as telekinesis. It's a little bit different, a little bit wilder, and interesting too. I thought that was cool. Okay, this next one here is from Arrow Video, and this is a 4K, and this is Wolfgang Petersen film, a remake of Poseidon Adventure, Poseidon, that came out in 2006. The big name for me in here is Kurt fucking Russell. Josh Lucas is also in here. You got Richard Dreyfuss. You have Freddie Rodriguez pops up in there. Am I missing anyone? Big actors and everything like that. Those are the ones that stand out to me. But I'm sure I'm missing somebody in here. These big kind of casts like this. So the original Poseidon Adventure, I always caught on television. It was one of these ones that was on TV. Gene Hackman, Shelley Winters, Ernest Borgnine, Roddy McDowall. And I remember Leslie Nielsen. I remember, liking the movie, the disaster movies of the 70s. And I was thinking about that. I was like, did they make that many more disaster movies in different decades? And I was kind of arguing, like, they had their kind of fair share. In the 90s, they were like, well, Twister. It's not really a disaster movie, but it has disaster things in there. People chasing tornadoes. In the 70s, it was like, here's a towering inferno. This is an earthquake. This is an avalanche. And that was the whole movie, airplane crash. So the kind of disaster movies, they even mix genres when you get stuff like Killer Fish. But so remaking Poseidon in 2006, they got Wolfgang Petersen, who had done a lot of big films, and Outbreak and stuff like that. And of course, Das Boot with the water and Perfect Storm. So he was not unfamiliar with kind of water things here. I remember seeing, Kevin Dillon's in this too. I remember seeing part of this when it came out. My parents were watching it, and I caught a part of it. It actually seemed pretty fun, and it didn't do very well theatrically. It kind of got crapped on and everything like that. But watching some of these early 2000 movies that were these big blockbuster kind of, epics, if you will, I'm taking away something. Rewatching Deep Blue Sea, it was like 98, 99. I think 99, I'm taking away like, oh wow, the special effects are really good for what they are. And I don't mean that as an insult again. They're taking these big, giant practical sets like Poseidon is, and then they're adding these CGI elements with the water and things like that. And I actually thought the CGI looked pretty decent in this. And that's funny because this is damn near 20-year-old CGI, and sometimes you'll watch a new movie that's a big budget movie, and everything's CGI, so they don't have that reel to fall back on, so everything just looks fucking fake. And I don't know. And this is like, it's like every week Mrparka is going to try to figure out a way how to dog on new movies, but simultaneously watch a bunch of new movies and praise them at the same time. That's just, but I feel like towards the early 2000s, we were still getting those practical mixed with CGI. And I think that Poseidon does it pretty damn well. And it was like, they mixed in so many different aspects in here. They actually worked with a college, the special effects people, to like figure out how the water would look better and everything. And LGM, I can't remember that big company company that did a lot of the digital effects at the time. But the effects are pretty fucking good. I am a mark for Kurt Russell. He's one of my all-time favorite actors. He's a charming guy. This one he plays an ex-fireman, ex-mayor. And, Adrian Brower's in here, too. So, essentially, you guys know the story of Poseidon. I don't remember what originally sank the first one in Poseidon Adventure, but, so this giant, rogue wave comes around and it hits the boat. They flip upside down. The chaos is intense. And I was like, man, what is this rated? This has got to be PG-13. Of course it is. But, watching all these dead bodies in the beginning, the chaos and stuff, I was like, this is pretty violent for PG. And like, I can't help but put on my like film glasses here and be like, well, after 9/11, we had to, like, I feel like they're just like, hey, let's do some disaster movies. People are ready to see some disaster movies. Like 9/11 came out a few years before, but it feels like almost too real for the disaster movies that nowadays they would definitely kind of tone it down. You see some CGI, but you got bodies falling from high stories and slapping the ground, and it's just a little bit more brutal than expected. And I can appreciate the little bit of realism in a ridiculous movie about a sinking boat. And they do pretty good. A lot of the stuff that they do does seem real. There's a lot of underwater stunts, of course. You know, they got to swim under here, swim under there, which is very common. And these movies. Deep Rising is a movie that I watched from the late 90s recently. Not for the first time, I've seen it a bunch of times. But there's so many of these. We got to swim here to there. And Poseidon Adventure does the same thing. And they even have the big kind of sacrifice moment that I remember being in that film, too. So characters are picked off, some of them in absolutely ridiculous ways. Almost like it turns into a slasher film where it's like, well, we got to cross this elevator and nonsense is going to happen. Richard Dreyfuss is good in here, playing a gay character. He has some decent lines in here, and I liked him. And you know, he's not a character you exactly expect to make it to the end, but you may be surprised who lives and dies in this one. Josh Lucas, at first, he has a kind of that thing going on here, right? Because he's kind of like the guy who's like, I'm going to get us out of here. You guys I don't want anybody coming with me, but he like kind of, you know, he's like kind of a dick, standoffish at first, but overall, he becomes kind of like the hero that you want. And I couldn't help but think, man, like, I feel like Bradley Cooper would have been very good in this role, and I'm like, Josh Lucas is kind of like a Bradley Cooper kind of character type. This is before Bradley Cooper was like a bigger actor, though. But I always wonder. I know Lucas is probably making movies nonstop, but I really hadn't seen him that much in very many movies, and he does fine. You know, I don't think anyone overall steals the whole entire movie. I think everybody's solid in it. They're decent in it. Kevin Dillon plays a funny role as Lucky Larry or something along those lines, and they established the characters in a small dose, not too much. Maybe they could have done a little bit more establishing of the characters. But overall, the Poseidon, it's fun. It's entertaining. It's a big blockbuster. It's by a great director. It has really good special effects. It's got a good cinematographer in John Seal, who had worked in dozens of movies. I think he's an Aussie guy. So I would recommend Poseidon if you're into big, like, adventure kind of disaster movies. And maybe just give it a rental or something at first, or watch it on the Arrow streaming platform if you're unsure, because again, there's a lot of movies that you watch of their time and you're disappointed or upset with, or you skip because you don't think you're interested. You go back and you're like, you know, that was much better than I expected. And this one was a solid, fun, big disaster movie. There is some new features on here. The 4K looks solid. It has a 5.1 mix, which is pretty good on here. It does have Dolby Vision. We have subtitles, of course. Ocean View, a brand new interview with director-photographer John Seal. I enjoyed that. Talks about his career. Talks about working with Wolfgang Petersen. Big sets for big-time directors. Brand new interview with production designer William Sandell. And I think I had seen him on other features. It might have even been Deep Blue Sea, but this guy knows exactly what he's doing. And you see these sets and some behind-the-scenes footage. It's really intense stuff. Surfing the VFX wave, a brand new interview with visual FX supervisor Boyd Shermis. Talks about how they brought in the water, how they matched it, how they tried to make it as real as they could. Bringing Out the Dead, a brand new interview with makeup effects artist on set supervisor Michael Deek. And I think he's the guy that mentions they were putting like faces of the corpses. They were like casting people that would come by and look at the set. Like Spielberg came by, so they would like cast random actors. So like some of the dead bodies and the dummies are actually like famous actors' faces. Set a course for adventure, brand new retrospective on the film by Heath Holland. That's Serial at Midnight. And to be honest, you know, I've seen some of his YouTube. I don't watch that much YouTube, really. But he does a pretty good job talking about disaster movies and stuff, and talking about Poseidon. And I think it's a fair kind of breakdown retrospective of it, and he does a good job. Poseidon, a ship on a soundstage, a featurette looking at the film's production, featuring interviews with cast and crew. These are archival featurettes. Poseidon Upside Down, a featurette exploring the film's challenging set designs. Shipmate's Diary, a featurette following production. Assistant Monona Voigt on the set of Poseidon. Reversible Sleeve, featuring original newly commissioned artwork by JC. Illustrated collector's booklet featuring new writing on the film by Priscilla Page. So there we go. Wolfgang Petersen flick here. And I do want to mention some of the other actors in here. You know what? I feel like I'm missing some of them. Emily Rossum and Jacinda Barnett and Mike Vogel. These are actors that I'm not super familiar with. Of course, I know the big names, of course, and like somebody like Freddie Rodriguez who pop up in a lot of genre films as well. But yeah, Poseidon, it's a fun movie. It sounds like it's up your alley. Okay, this next one here is from Cult Epics. This is 1976 movie by Pim de la Parra, and I've covered a few of his films. I think most people on this channel will probably be more familiar with My Nights with Susan Olga movie, which has some horror aspects, and Obsessions, which definitely has some voyeur horror aspects. Scorsese was a fan of that movie. And he also did Frank and Eva. All those movies are released by Cult Epics, and they're worth seeking out. He's a Dutch Surinese filmmaker. This movie is basically about Suriname and the Dutch connection and everything like that, which is something that I really didn't know much about. This is listed as most popular movie on Letterboxd, and this is one that I had not seen until Cult Epics put it out. So this is one of these movies that kind of just follows a character and is, it's more to explore the culture and try to explain it. The director and behind the scenes feature basically was saying, I didn't think that the media and the newspapers were getting the connection between the Dutch and the Surinese, which is an African country. Oh, I'm saying that name. Suriname or Surinese is what you'd say. I didn't feel like people understood the culture, and I wanted to kind of show a character in here to kind of get it across, a personal kind of story in there. And that I do agree with that. I mean, there's a lot of people that see numbers or they hear things, and they don't necessarily understand it until they get any nuances in within the culture or been lived in it or anything like that. So he definitely wanted to explore it. And this country has a weird mixture of people. I guess if you explain something like New Orleans or something to people that aren't from America, you'd be like, well, it's got a Haitian mixture, and it's got the Southern mixture, and it's got all these different kind of things in there, and French, and they speak this certain language. It's a very unique blend of people. India, Indonesian, and African kind of all being in this geographical location and different people living there. And so one guy who's moved to he's in Dutch, he's living in Dutchland. Is it Dutchland? What was it? Netherlands, sorry. I think it's Netherlands with Dutchland, Germany. Whatever. You guys get what I'm saying. So he went there. He was sent away by his family to study abroad economics and things like that. And he's made a life for himself. He's with a woman and all that, a relationship for a few years, it seems. And he seems to love her, but he goes back to his home country because his mother's dying. Right when he meets her, she dies pretty quickly afterwards. And she gives him this kind of beautiful line, and all the people in the family are sitting out there crying. It's a really emotional, well done scene. And almost right away, he starts to kind of wander around his hometown and his place of, and he's taken with it. He's eating, he's drinking, he's hearing the music, and he falls in love fairly quickly with this Indian woman. Of course, the parents of both these families forbid it. They hate it. They're old school, old guard. They don't like the cultures mixing. They're very racist. All these kind of things like that. And they say that these parents live with two hearts, They and you cannot live with two hearts, you know what I mean? You want to be this loving person, but also you have so much hate in here. You have these two hearts in there constantly fighting, and you can't live with two hearts. But it gets really dramatic and kind of gut-wrenching at the point, where his actual girlfriend from shows up back and visits him. So we have, I don't want to call it a love triangle because it's not really that story, but this kind of really raw emotional stuff where the people that are the older generation do not understand the feelings of this. But when you look at it, these people are in their 20s, and as you get older in life, you realize that sometimes, I always people tell you to follow your heart and stuff, and it's very complicated. Doing the right thing and doing the thing that you want to do not necessarily always the same thing. I'm like siding with the old people, like, yeah, then you don't marry other races because it's wrong. No, but that's not what I'm saying. But you can see like how this idea that he was studying abroad and his family gave up so much for him, and yet he just throws it away because he feels like he belongs with his people, and it's just a feeling. It's not logical. It doesn't make any logical sense. But yeah, I think it's a pretty interesting movie with a lot of interesting characters, and I think you can understand their motivations, even if they seem driven by, you know, I wouldn't say lust, but infatuation and love and all that kind of stuff like that. I enjoyed it. It's an interesting movie. It's a place that I did not know much about, and I learned a little bit about, and I could kind of gather and understand it. Well acted. The fathers are both really good. There's a good scene where the one father comes to the other father, and they have like a translator in between them. And the main character's father, I can't think, the Syrianese guy, is great. He's fantastic. He's probably my favorite character, although it's not like he's like, oh, he's the coolest guy, but he's just an interesting character. Yeah. I would recommend checking this out if you're into dramas, kind of into other cultures and interesting stuff like that. His other films are cool too. I would recommend My Nights with Susan and Olga. I think that one's pretty good. Frank and Eva is one of these movies too. It has some similarities to Wan Pipel, where we have there's definitely some infidelity, but that one's more so just a guy who can't control himself. It's not like true love or anything noble about him. He's just kind of a scummy guy. And he's like a man-child in that Frank and Eva. But, you know, Obsessions, I remember being very, very kind of almost experimental and almost like kind of art, like voyeur stuff. But this one it's worth it. I would recommend it. It's also a beautiful location. There's a point where they take like this kind of a boat trip and go through like the village and the jungle and stuff like that, kind of the more like I don't want to say uninhabitable places, but the more rural areas and forests and stuff like that, and that's cool. But I would recommend this. This has some features on there, of course. New 2K restoration, audio commentary by film historian Lex Veerkamp and Bodil La Parra, that is the daughter of the director. Introduction by Pim La da Parra, 2020, the making of Wan Pipel. This is like from 76 and everything like that. Interview with Wilkie van Armaru, who plays his love interest from Back Home. Not Back Home, but the other one. By Guido Franken. Bonus short film Tamara, 1965. Photo gallery, Scorpio film trailers. New artwork designed by Juan Esteban R. And it is not in English. It is in Dutch and Suriname languages with optional English subtitles. Good stuff. So it's like... It's a Netherlands kind of Syrianese co-production. USA Netherlands is what they call it. So yeah, check it out. Okay, this next one here is from Deaf Crocodile, and this is the last Aleksandr Ptushko film from 1972. This is the last film he directed. He died shortly after in 1973. This is an epic. This is over 2 hours long. His other films are relatively short, and this is Ruslan and Ludmila. I want to make sure I said that right. But this is kind of a classic fairy tale style thing as well, where we have this king, and he's having this big kind of ceremony to marry off his daughter. She's going to pick her kind of suitor, her husband, and we have like these four kind of like, I guess like warriors or knights or these noble guys that show up. One is like this big fat kind of buffoon guy that's pretty much comic relief. One is a guy that really genuinely seems like he's looking for love. One is just looks like a Vincent Price style evil character, and then we have the guy that she does pick, this big kind of like attractive guy. So she picks him, and right before they can even consummate their wedding, anything like that, during the live celebration of the entire village together, everybody's getting drunk, she is kidnapped. She's torn out of her window and he can't protect her, taken away. So he and the king says whoever brings her back will actually be her husband. So all these kind of warriors go looking for her to find her, and they separate and whatnot, and they kind of have their own adventures and things like that. And I don't want to spoil what exactly every little detail that happens to these people, but the culprit behind the kidnapping ends up being this kind of a small person with this giant beard. Now, who is the character that has the Samson, right, with the long hair? Who is the guy with the classic mythology here? I'm sounding like an idiot, where his hair is cut and he is no longer strong. But it's kind of in that aspect, right? And this guy has basically unlimited magical powers. And a lot of the film is him kind of holding her captive in these absolutely ridiculously fun moments where he'll have her in this bed, and there's all these gorgeous giant parrots and cockatoos and cockatiels and other like tropical birds around, while he's basically trying to, like, she's trying to run from him, and it's a bunch of hijinks, and his goblins are helping her. But he's a very interesting, cool character. There's a lot of kind of like, I guess, kind of jokey physical gags with that whole chase scene and things like that. And there's some other really cool special effects too that are innovative, where we have a giant talking head that tells a big tale. And we stop the movie too where we meet a couple characters who kind of give some exposition dumps, but where we get these mini stories, these mini vignettes within the entire story to kind of add structure. It's broken up in 2 parts, and the first part ends really well, because then we're having our knight, kind of our main guy, go on his way to kind of confront this magical guy who, by all means, we really don't think he's going to be able to beat him. But yeah, so this is a good one. It's I still think Ilya Muromets is my favorite. I really do think that is the guy's best film that I've seen, maybe besides Vi, which I guess on the commentary he did a lot of special effects, not maybe necessarily didn't direct. Stephen R. Bissett talks about that. Again, talks a lot about other Russian fantastic movies on the commentary too. Not just this director. He talks about the history of them, which is a really cool commentary. But I like this. These are big. These are epic. These have glorious special effects. They have glorious set designs. They have great kind of innovative matte paintings and things like that, and miniatures. And sometimes I was like, oh, that's a miniature, and then somebody walks in front of it, and I'm like, that's not a miniature. That is pretty fucking impressive. These are expensive, these are funny, these are entertaining, and they're easy to watch fairy tale epics. As far as the special features are concerned, we have new 4K restoration from original camera negatives and sound elements by Most Film, a new commentary track by comics artist Swamp Thing, film historian and author Stephen R. Bissett, new essay by film historian Professor Peter Rollberg, historical dictionary of Russian and Soviet cinema, new video essay by film critic Walter Chaw, Film Freak Central, Blu-ray authoring by David Mackenzie of Fidelity and Motion. So a great release, hour and 145 minutes, so 2 hours and 25 minutes, Region A. This is the second printing. Recommended. Cool stuff. Okay, this next one here is from Fun City Editions, and I absolutely love this movie. This is 1980. This is Breaking Glass. Now, this is about kind of like the rock star story. Hazel O'Connor, who was a musician, and I wouldn't necessarily call it like punk, but this is like a new wave style music. She's like punk new wave, and this is about her character, and that's not her, but it's kind of, I imagine, semi-autobiographical, her rise to fame, and then basically her kind of crash and whatnot. And it's a more realistic kind of story to a certain extent, but yeah, it's a great look at Britain in the 80s and the punk scene and all that kind of stuff, with amazing performances, amazing music, actually sung by Hazel O'Connor. I love the lyrics. This is definitely my type of music. This kind of, I love all different sorts of music, like I said, but as is my movie taste is very eclectic, so is my music taste, although I do have favorites. But I love the lyrics, I love the weirdness, and Hazel is this like underground punk artist, and she doesn't really want to conform to anything. She's very much against the big government, big brother, all that kind of stuff like that. She even has a song called Big Brother, completely against any of that stuff, down with like the fascist government kind of stuff mentality. Phil Daniels is in here, and he's kind of a, he's a wannabe like kind of manager. He wants to be a manager. He actually had helped an artist in a weird kind of shitty way buying disc or albums to get higher up on the charts. But in the very beginning, he's kind of kicked out of this like music party. He's not welcome there, and he goes and sees Hazel at this like dive place. And he kind of becomes immediately infatuated with her, thinks she's really good, realizes the other punks around do not get it, they do not like it, they do not appreciate her. So he wants to be her manager, and he wants to get this band together, and he starts bringing in all these people. The most notable is, of course, Jonathan Pryce, which I believe this is his first film role, and Jonathan Pryce was a theater actor before this, and of course he would go on to do things like Brazil. He's in, of course, Ronin. He's in Something Wicked This Way Comes. He's in Evita. Jonathan Pryce is 100%. He's in Ronin. Yeah, underrated actor. Just underrated completely. In this movie, he plays a deaf, heroin-addicted saxophone player. He's fantastic in this, and they mention this in the commentary and the features all the time. They say he only had like 10 lines in the movie, but he's in the whole movie. He only had 10 lines, but he just steals the show when he's on screen, and he absolutely does. Great performance by him, great screen presence, especially for an early role like this, but still amazing. Hazel O'Connor, I love in this movie. Like I said, I love her music, I love her demeanor. But as they get bigger, as they push forward, of course, there's going to be some stuff with the band. There's going to be some infighting, and there's going to be music producers and professionals that get involved and kind of weasel their way within the community and possibly break them apart. That's where John Finch comes in. John Finch from what is he? Frenzy and other things like that. He's good in here. He's got a great voice. But he's great in here. But Phil Daniels and Hazel O'Connor and Jonathan Pryce, I think, steal the show. They're fantastic. And at the end, we kind of have this, like, I don't want to spoil everything, but this meltdown scene, and it gets surreal, and it's kind of just a great, I don't even say allegory, because a metaphor, whatever it is, regardless. It's I guess simile, but it's just basically, you know, a hallucination of everything that's happened to her put into this, like, whole life flash before her eyes on the train thing. But fantastic scene. Great sets when it comes to like the music performance sets and her outfits and stuff like that kind of stuff. I mean, great outfits, I should say. Set design, that kind of thing. But I love this. I thought it was fantastic. There's 2 versions of this movie. They talk a lot about that in the special features. And the American export version was completely different from the original theatrical British version. They've actually put together the British version that's supposed to be proper. So we got the one with the original ending, and they also went ahead and put all the differences from the United States version on the disc, so you can see the stuff that was cut or moved or changed. Great film, great music drama. I would highly recommend it. If you have not seen this movie, I would check out Breaking Glass. As far as the special features, we have new video interview with producer Davida Belling, new video essay by Chris O'Neill, newly recorded audio commentary by Mark Edward Heck. Alternate scene edits from North American version of the film, Image Gallery. And the commentary is really interesting. The producer knows their stuff, and they talk about how this came together. And they talk about, you know, Phil Daniels, all sorts of stuff like that. They go into depth on it, too. And I had seen Phil Daniels before in a few movies. I completely forgot. He's in Scum, both versions, but I remember him in Scum. Yeah, and Scum's a crazy British film if you've not seen that one. But yeah, I love this movie. Looks great. Sounds great. Highly recommend it if you like music films. But I do too. I mean, it's not my favorite genre, but I don't think I've ever seen like one that I've truly hated. But so even if you don't, I would still give this one a spin. I had this set sitting here, and this is one of my biggest blind spots directors ever. And I had only seen one film by this director, and it was House of Long Shadows from 1983. It's Pete Walker. He is a pretty famous British director, did some horror films, some sex comedy things. So I have the Kino movies, but I picked up this 88 films released not too long ago. They're remastered versions of the Pete Walker set, and I'm going to do one of these every week. It looks fantastic. I think it's a 4K remaster. It has to be. It looked absolutely beautiful. And we're going to start with Die Screaming Marianne from 1971, starring Susan George and Leo Glenn. Now, Susan George, I know, of course, from Dirty Mary, Crazy Larry, and Straw Dog. She's in a bunch of other things, Venom. Just really great, interesting actress. Didn't do as much as I would have liked her to do, and she is fantastic in this movie. We have open up during like the credits where we have Susan George kind of like doing this belly dancing, and we learn that she's kind of like running away from something. She's in this like kind of low-down rent nightclub, like working for not much, and these guys are looking for her. She kind of runs away, and she almost gets hit by a car. This kind of very gaunt, skinny British guy, and they start to argue, but then he's like, hey, you want to ride? And we kind of jump around in time. At first, it's like that was a few weeks past, all sorts of stuff like that. And to be honest, Die Screaming Marianne is a little sloppy in its storytelling, but by the end of it, I think it works for this movie, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. Now, it's not a British horror movie. It's definitely a British genre film. It's more of a thriller kind of crime film, but it does have horror aspects most definitely. And with the director's name attached to it, go on to do a bunch of horror films. I think people just kind of threw Die Screaming Marianne into the kind of horror genre, as Sam Deegan says in the commentary as well. And I'm glad I started with this one because, according to her, a lot of people were disappointed with this movie when they went back because it wasn't as horror. But I thought it was really cool and interesting. But I also like the British thrillers and stuff like that from Hammer and stuff. But so what happens is this guy has an idea to marry her really quick, 3 weeks, and through a mistake, she ends up marrying his friend at the quick kind of turnaround marriage place. This complicates things, but Susan George realizes she'd rather actually be with him. So Leo Glenn is her judge father. Weird family history. I don't want to get into that. And she has a sister named Hildegard, who is an absolute vicious, crazy monster. So There is some weird gothic stuff going on with wills and money and maybe some documents, and they want her into their life. He lives in Portugal. He's an ex-judge. He's crooked as shit. They are sending people out to get, Marianne. And this complicates things. They start to use people that she knows to try to manipulate her and bring her in. And at the end of it, we all kind of end the movie at this villa, or the judge's villa, with all these characters there. And people start to get killed. And maybe people die that you don't expect to die. Maybe people die in weird ways or different orders. But I found it pretty refreshing and pretty unique. It looks fantastic. Like I said, it's gorgeously shot, great location. And one thing that I will always praise for movies that are older is the music and songs made for movies, or just scores, or they're actual songs made for the movie. And we got this Marianne song about being alone and never finding love, and I was like, that's great, that's fitting. Susan George makes this movie. Leo Glenn's fantastic too. There's a really nasty, intense scene with his daughter Hildegard, where it almost goes into incest territory. That's another kind of gothic trope in there. But it's like, oh shit. But Leo Glenn's really strong in here. The way he delivers his lines is great. But Susan George is electric. And I had seen her in a few things, like, of course, Straw Dogs. She's great in that. Like, that's undeniable. She's probably, I think she's the best part, and that and Peter Vaughn in Straw Dogs, I think, are my favorites. I think they turned in my favorite performances. But she's great in that. And she's great in Dirty Mary Crazy Larry, but this one is the one where I was like, oh, she's fucking amazing. No wonder, like, she was so popular. And I liked everything I saw her, and I just didn't, it's just not that, I haven't seen all the movies. I know I always need to see Sonny and Jed, which has been on my list for years, but I love this. I thought it was great. Great start to Pete Walker movie. I can't wait to watch the rest. It got me excited to see the rest, and sometimes you just got to do something. I get a lot of movies to review, and I have these other things I'm doing. Like, I got to do these A3 movies. I got to do this for this person, all that stuff like that. So I was like, I'm just going to watch one on my own. I want to watch the fucking Pete Walker movies. So I finally did. I also need to watch some Norman J. Warren movies. I've only seen one of his, but there's a lot of people that I just need to go down the line and watch everything. There's a lot of directors I've seen almost everything. It's like, hey, I've seen about 50 Jess Franco movies. I've only seen one Pete Walker movie. Let's correct that, okay? So as far as the special features on here, we have brand new artwork by Sean Longmore, versatile sleeve featuring original poster artwork, brand new 2K remaster from original camera negative, high definition, okay, 1661, dual mono soundtrack, audio commentary film critic Sam Deegan, audio commentary director producer Pete Walker, English Gothic author Jonathan Rigby. Okay, that's cool. Tales of Terror, an interview with director Pete Walker, relatively short, 6 minutes. No regrets on his retirement. And Norman Langley on Die Screaming Marianne. That's about 12 minutes. Original trailer. Yeah, awesome. Cool set. Not going to open up the set, but on this set we got Die Screaming Marianne, The Flesh and Blood Show, House of Whipcord, Frightmare, House of Mortal Sin, Schizo, mixing up with Schizoid from 1980, and The Comeback. House of Long Shadows is not in here, but that's a hell of a set. I do have the Kino sets as well, but yeah, great set so far. Alright, I got a couple 2025 movies here. I think this was made in 2024, but it technically counts as a wide release 2025, and this is The Damned. This is a period piece film, kind of an isolated horror thing. And in a lot of ways, it reminds me of the opening of The Fog, the kind of the ghost tale in the very beginning, and that kind of style of thing. So what happens is we have this isolated, very cold island, where I think it's like a Scandinavian island, and they basically fish. There is about half a dozen guys and a woman who recently had lost her husband with this group of fishermen. He was the kind of captain of the boat, and she owns the boat, so she's got vested interests. This is the only people she's ever known. So one day, there's these kind of teeth that they call it. So it's like this kind of jagged rocks in between the opening, and it looks like a mouth of teeth, so they call them the teeth. This kind of large boat gets stuck on there, and the water is bitterly cold, the waves are brutal, and they hear these people screaming for help, and they basically say, we can't help them. And she makes the final call on the decision, although some people do want to go help them. And they let these people drown a horrible kind of death. That night, I guess the waters have calmed down, so they decide to go kind of see what was out there after something washes ashore, and they realize there's food, and they're starving because the fishing is bad, all this stuff is happening and struggling out there. So they go kind of scavenge amongst them, and what happens is, even more tragedies happen, and one of the old women, the other old woman that's there, she starts to kind of rant about this old kind of I don't necessarily Dragcore or something along those lines, which is like a cursed human being, and if you do something to these people and you do not take the precautions to bury them properly, will come back for revenge. And as we're in this isolated, freezing cold, like tundra climate, of course, the people start to kind of lose their grip on reality. How much of it is actually this revengeful spirit coming back for the people that they feel have wronged, or how much of it is their own people's mental stability? That's kind of where we're at here. Great atmosphere. I remember the score being pretty decent, if I remember correctly here. You know, it's like one of the first movies I watched this week. And I think it's well acted. I think that this one's overall a solid movie. I think this is one of the better movies of the year. And I like my period pieces. I like the kind of creepy mythology, the subtlety at times. And I think overall the acting was good. I think this one's definitely worth watching. And, you know, these kind of weird myths and folklore, if you will, from a different country or a different time, I find more interesting than your average everyday monsters that we see all the time. Okay, the next one here is Woman in the Yard. And this director did Orphan, and he did the House of Wax remake, which I actually think is a really fun, great remake to Tourist Trap. But you guys all know the joke. But that's a good movie. I enjoy the House of Wax. So Women in the Yard. And everybody was saying this was really horrible, and I was like, okay, I'm still going to give it a chance because it looks like a professionally solid, well-done movie, decent director, and I feel like a lot of the complaints are pretty well placed. So this is The Babadook and Hold Your Breath. Hold Your Breath came out, I think, last year, and it's kind of the isolated frontier movie with the wind and the possible creature within the wind, or is it actually the mental sanity of these women being constantly stuck out in isolation by themselves, and the work never ends, all that kind of stuff. And the Babadook, of course, the grief. And this is kind of where we have Woman in the Yard. Technically, this is a well-made movie, well shot, good transitions, good camera work, well acted, pretty good standard characters. But the story is one of these, like, it's a nuanced story, right, where we have seen it, and it's been done a lot, and it's pretty much to a T. It's almost like, I don't want to say it's a ripoff, but we have this couple, this family that recently lost the father. So it's two kids and a mother who's suffering through some injuries of her own from the car accident. And this random woman appears in their yard. They're isolated in the country. They don't have a phone. The car doesn't work. All these kind of things that are there. And this woman obviously represents something. That's where I'll leave it at. I think that there's some creepy, decent moments. I think that all the acting from the main four people in here is good. I think the camera work is good. I think it's a professional, well-done movie. I just think it's probably about 4 or 5 years, 10 years, a little too late to make an impact now. Maybe we'll revisit. Like, oh, man, those old movies that were kind of like The Babadook or kind of like that. But there's been movies like that before, except they don't necessarily feel exactly like another movie. And that's what I'm getting at here. And I don't want to dog on this movie because I feel like there's a lot of talent behind and in front of the camera, but it's just average. It's not bad. It's just very mediocre, and you've seen this before. And doesn't mean it's bad. It just means that some people... mileage will vary on this one. Women in the Yard. Okay, the Patreon pick is the Super Inframan, and this is made in the 70s from the Shaw Brothers, and I think most people that are unfamiliar with any Asian cinema would pop this in and be like, what is this Japanese movie? This gotta be Japanese. Danny Lee's in it. So yeah, from Mighty Peking Man and Untold Story, classic Hong Kong actor. This is a weird one. So Super Inframan. This is bonkers. That's all I can say. It's very Japanese, very Super Sentai suit, very Guyver, very much in that kind of aspect, like Ultraman or something, if you will. But what we have here is, it appears that these kind of like, it's slightly in the future. I'm not sure, they're like mining or something, and they hit this mountain. I don't necessarily know how they uncover this, but what happens is they break through this mountain, and this basically like super like godlike woman comes out, and she says, I am essentially somebody that was here in the past. These kind of not humans, but they were on this earth before, and they were like superhumans or something along that aspect. She's like, and along with my group of monsters that are basically different evolved animals, I am going to take the earth over. All the humans must obey me or die. Now the humans are like, shit. So they go to like last minute protocol. We got the Super Inframan suit. We're going to put it in Danny Lee, and he's our last hope to fight these monsters. And the monsters are ridiculous. They're straight out of Power Rangers, but just a little bit more crazy and goofier and funner. More fun to me. I don't know if they're as goofy, because I mean, we did have the fucking lipstick in Power Rangers. I'm not a big Power Rangers guy because it's the same thing over and over again. One movie though, I did not hate the Power Rangers movie that came out though, but I'm just saying. So this is very Power Rangers too, if you guys with lamest terms. But So essentially, it's Super Inframan, and he's got to fight all these goofy monsters. When you watch the English dub version, there's this like tunneler guy, and he's like, "Yeah." It's very much in a Santo kind of world too, where everything's cheesy and hilarious. And when you like go down like all the weird movies in the 60s and 70s, like leading up to this stuff, it's like we have like the Super Sentai Ultraman stuff, we have the Santo stuff, we have the Spy James Bond stuff, we have the Batman stuff. All this kind of weird, quirky, cheesy, campy shit all came to a head and stuff in a lot of the 70s movies, and we just get like this bizarre kind of style thing. And that's kind of what this is. So what I really liked about this is the monsters have really cool powers, and it's paced really well. So, he fights this monster here, he kills this monster, and then and Godzilla too, is that's kind of in that vein as well, of course. But he fights this guy, and then he goes into the main base and everything. You know, it is somewhat a little bit like a Shaw Brothers Kung Fu movie, and the fighting is not like a Japanese style movie, it's more in the Shaw Brothers style. But I actually was so happy and entertained with how fun this movie was. It's non-stop action, it's non-stop goons and monsters, and yes, they look cheap and paper mache, but I loved it. There is a plant guy, and he is awesome, and the way he uses his powers is really cool, really unique. I thought that his fight scene was probably one of my favorites. And I don't want to go through and just spoil all the fight scenes and say what happens to the monsters and everything, but there is one scene that I think was the one that got me to laugh the loudest, is when one of them gets stepped on. It just splats like a fucking bug. But I love this. This is great stuff. This is entertaining stuff and way different from a lot of the other Shaw Brothers movies. I've seen all their wacky, gory, crazy horror movies. I've seen so many of their martial arts films. I've seen their wuxia movies. I've seen their serious dramas. I've seen their contemporary thriller crime films or youth gone wild movies. But never quite seen anything like Super Inframan. I guess The Mighty Peking Man would be the closest one, but this is great. This is fun. By the director of Kung Fu Zombie from 1981, not to be confused with Kung Fu Zombie from 1982. There's two movies that are Kung Fu Zombie from this. One's 81, one's 82. I've watched them both. They're kind of similar. But loved Super Inframan. Great pick for the Patreon pick. Loved it. All right, let's get in these questions, comments, and concerns. Nick Moore from Belgium. The Rage Carry 2, I rather disliked it upon my first viewing. Bit of a cash grab. But I've grown to like it more and more over the years. Young Emily Burgle, Burgle? Was really good. I don't know if that's Berg or what, misspelled. But was really good in it and has worked steadily ever since. Can't wait for the Craze Carry 3. This time it's personal. It always is personal with Carry. You probably saw the Radiance is releasing a 4K UHD editions of the Belgium horror classics. Is it Mrparka, I believe is how you say it, and Daughters of Darkness. I'll be upgrading, I'm pretty sure. I'll definitely get Mrparka and probably review it on here. Daughters of Darkness, I have the Blue Underground, and that's fantastic looking 4K. Questions. 1, did you ever see the Amicus Picture film Scream and Scream Again? If yes, is it worth purchasing? I've covered Scream and Scream Again a couple times on here, and it's not my favorite Amicus. It's not my favorite Lee Cushing Price movie, that's for sure. But you gotta see it. And I would, there's never going to be, it'd be a cold day in hell if I told somebody not to watch a Vincent Price movie or a Christopher Lee movie. Cushing's role is small, but the movie is grown on me and it has a great cover art. Which Stephen King book should they adapt next? I don't know. They adapted a lot of them. I know people are always like, The Long Walk was one that people were pushing for a long time. And what was the one that Mike Flanagan did in the bed? Gerald's Game was another one that they made. I would like to maybe see, let's see him do some of the other short stories in the Night Shift collection. What was the one on the Skeleton Crew with the serial killer, and every time Mist came around that they would kill? We could do that one. I don't know if that one's ever been done. I don't remember the name of it. How would you define folk horror? They're releasing another one. Most early review labels it folk horror on the 8th of August, called Birthright, featuring the amazing Owen Campbell. Love Owen Campbell. Folk horror is definitely, I was looking online, and what they would say, they said it was isolated. Like, to me, it would just have to be like regional kind of superstitions and stuff like that. Regional superstitions and that aspect, almost outdated practices and whatnot. Superstition is definitely something that plays with it for me, and places where people that show up feel like outsiders if they're not part of it. Till the next time, God willing. Also, spells, anything witchy, stuff like that reminds me of folk horror. Thank you. Gray Nunez gives me a little thumbs up, hard eyes. Thank you. Southport Rocker Radiance Films has released some interesting looking titles. This has Death Crocodile. Interesting always to see what these companies release. As always, solid reviews. Cheers. Thank you very much. Much appreciated. And what do we got here? Next page. Collectus. Always loved the original Tsar Sultan story, but it seems Ptushko's movies are kind of forgotten in Russia now. That's a shame. And I know they were talking about in the special features that they were like, some of them were a little too silly and people were like offended. Like, this should be a serious story. And his movies were just like, I guess, whimsical or whimsy. Elk Vomit, just some random strange questions that have nothing to do with movies for you. What is Mrparka's go-to pizza topping style of crust? If you're like trying to watch what you eat, like you're like, I gotta count my calories, always get thin crust. Just get thin crust if you're watching that. But if not, I like all kinds of pizza. Thin crust, regular crust, tavern style, deep dish. I'm down to any of the pizza. Detroit style. But I would go with the standard, which is in Ohio probably maybe not the standard to everyone else. So I'm not 100% sure. And if I'm getting toppings, I would go, I like mushrooms. I like chicken. I like banana peppers. I like feta cheese, green peppers. But I lately just been getting a plain cheese. If the pizza's good enough, plain cheese will do. And then it's kind of try it. Just if you haven't had it in a long time, just get a plain cheese pizza. I know it's crazy to say, but if it's a shitty pizza, load that fucker up with toppings. But if it's a quality pizza, just get a cheese. Just try it if you haven't in a long time. Right off the top of your head, who wins in a fight, Hulk or Superman? Superman wins. I'm a Hulk guy, not a Superman guy. Superman wrecks him. Do you believe the theory that Billy the Kid really wasn't shot and killed by Pat Garrett? I haven't put much thought into it. I guess the history books say Pat Garrett shot Billy the Kid, and that's what I've always thought. I know that there was a guy who came back and said, hey, I'm Billy the Kid, I really wasn't killed. But I know Young Guns 2 says that too, but I think that Pat Garrett most likely killed Billy the Kid. I have nothing else to go off. Have you legitimately ever ran out of gas in your car and were stranded? I think I was in somebody else's car when they ran out of gas. I don't think I ever ran out of gas, though, myself. Do you use DoorDash, Postmates? I have used DoorDash. I usually don't typically, never use Postmates. Don't really care for DoorDash very much, so I try not to use it. If your physical media collection was about to be incinerated, you could save it by going to New Kids on the Block concert or Boys to Men. Who do you go to? I'll go with Boys to Men over New Kids on the Block, yeah. And do you have a favorite Black Sabbath or Ozzy Osbourne album? I really don't know Ozzy or Black Sabbath like that. I know the hits, I know the songs that I know, and I like a lot of them, you know, and I probably have some deep cuts because one of my best friends growing up was really good at guitar. He was amazing at guitar, and he was a big Ozzy guy. So he'd show me songs like Killer of Giants, you know, which is an awesome song by Ozzy Osbourne. And there's other ones too. I can't think, there's a bunch of them that I liked at the time, but it's been so long. And I know I used, what was the fucking song I used for 1970? I feel like Ozzy was perfect for 1970 with the satanic stuff going on, and just that song's badass. But no, I like Ozzy. I'm just not like a super fan of Ozzy. I actually prefer Alice Cooper, and I know somebody's going to shoot me for that. I'm just more of an Alice Cooper guy. Not to saying they're better, it's just more my preference. But, you know, Ozzy, I liked a lot of his music. It's just that I'm not like a super fan of, like, I listen to album after album after album. In fact, I don't listen to albums so much anymore like I would when I was younger. But I do like Ozzy. I wouldn't say that I could give you a favorite album or anything like that. And then he says R.I.P. Ozzy, R.I.P. Hulk Hogan. And then we got Necropsy second. I don't think my video is popular enough to say first or second, but okay. Thank you, though. Way Up Dude gives me a thumbs up. Thank you. Ken Coakley. I watched Curie 2 the other night for the first time. Didn't expect to like it, but I did. Those super jocks were like jocks in my day, rebels without a clue. The London brother in the film was Jason London. It's easy to confuse one with the other since they are twins. I remember Jeremy from Mallrats and Jason from Dazed and Confused. Jason still acts and does faith-based films. I followed that up with the 2002 version of Carrie starring Angela Bendis. I didn't mind the changes, I still prefer the book. I also watched Cisco Pike. Chris Christopherson didn't have a beard, so his gigantic Robert Dazar-like chin was exposed. My favorite scene was when the girl asked him if it took long to perfect his accent. He replied, not really, I majored in shit kicking. I can't remember the name of the featurette about Christopherson. In the title, prophet, poet, pusher, and walking contradiction were used by Sybil Shepherd to describe Chris Christopherson to Robert De Niro and the Taxi Driver. Most certainly they are. I remember that. I didn't watch The Eel, but a Chinese teacher that I frequented had an eel in a lobster tank. No one wanted to eat the eel, so it became their pets. That's crazy. But I appreciate all the comments and everything like that. Let's get out of here, guys. All right, guys, thank you very much for watching. And as always, have a good one.